Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the audio podcast. I hope everyone is doing well in the past, present, future hour, whenever you're listening to this. So Thursday's show is kind of an indirect continuation of Monday's show, in which I talked about the NFL and how political correctness is ruining the football game professionally. And I made a kind of an offhand remark about how the left is going after NFL cheerleading squads, and it's funny that I brought that up just kind of as a throwaway comment because a friend of mine sent me an article about that, about how the left and the PC feminist mob is going after NFL cheerleaders. And of course, in my opinion, there is nothing... Well, factually, there's nothing degrading or inherently sexist about NFL cheerleaders. The feminists are just angry because they hate anything that titillates men, even if, such as cheerleading. Even though cheerleading also enables women to be quite successful, as we'll discuss in the show. So anyway, folks, that's the podcast for this week. We'll jump right into the show after a message from our sponsors. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Whitfield Report audio podcast. I want to thank you so very much for joining me once again this Thursday, whenever you're listening in the past, present, future hour. Great to be with you, as always. Folks, on Monday's show, I discussed NFL cheerleaders and how just basically I think the NFL in general has gone to crap. I discussed a little bit on Monday's bonus episode of the Whitfield Report how the NFL has become too politicized in general. I kind of did my overview of how I thought the Super Bowl went and whatnot. And I briefly mentioned NFL cheerleaders in there and how the left has started going after NFL cheerleaders. And, of course, they've used the excuse that, cheerleaders are a symbol of toxic masculinity and they're inherently sexist and whatnot. Well, I have an article about that, actually a column from Dennis Prager, that actually a friend of mine sent to me that I found to be a very interesting read, so I will be covering that tonight. People were asking on Twitter if I was going to cover the State of the Union address, and I was planning on doing a little bit of the State of the Union review tonight, but I've actually decided to save that for Saturday's show, for the live stream podcast that I do on YouTube, because for those of you who know, I like to play audio clips and give commentary on the news on the Saturday live stream show, so I'm going to save my more specific opinions on the State of the Union address that Trump gave on Tuesday for that evening on Saturday. Plus, we're going to talk about the State of the Union address on the American Watchman Roundtable on Sunday, which will also be live streamed. And we'll be talking about that more in depth then too. And of course, with it being the roundtable, I'll have Joshua and Gabe for sure joining me to discuss that. So you'll get plenty of State of the Union talk, so I don't want to address it too specifically right now. What I will say, just in general, kind of off the top of my head, Trump had some really good moments that I actually mentioned on Twitter during the State of the Union. I tried to stay off Twitter and just watch the State of the Union in its entirety. I know that during any big political events, whether it be election night or debates or what have you, political commentators, and I'm guilty of this too, tend to stay glued to our phone and do the whole, tweet every minute, and basically tweet about every remark made. Believe me, I've been guilty of it too. But I mainly just wanted to watch the State of the Union and limit my Twitter usage then, and only tweet when I felt it was absolutely necessary. So I did mention that Trump, said that we would never be under socialism. I thought that was great that he publicly said that we are not a socialist country and we never will be. I thought that was great. I also really like the fact that he said Americans do not fight, unnecessary wars. Kind of a little jab at the neocons there and the war hawks that I really liked. Keyword, of course, being unjust wars, and Trump is very pro-military and so am I. So just all in all, pretty great with that. And I also liked his talk, the part of the State of the Union where he was addressing anti-Semitism in America and how he was thanking law enforcement officials for stopping that synagogue shooting last year, and also recognizing the World War II veteran and the Holocaust survivor who were present at the State of the Union. And I mentioned that on my tweet that although Trump did that, the left will continue to lump him in with the alt-right and white supremacists. It doesn't matter what he does, they'll just continue to do that, which is, of course, sad. But anyway, those are just kind of my general off the top of my head thoughts on the State of the Union address. Again, I'll go much more into specific details regarding the State of the Union on both Saturday evening and Sunday evening with the American Watchman Roundtable. So both of those will be streamed live on my YouTube channel, Whitfield, the Whitfield Report, youtube.com/The Whitfield Report. And of course, the audio versions of both of those podcasts will be available on the podcast feed as well. But as I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's topic is mainly going to be about the how the PC police and the buzzkill feminists are going after NFL cheerleaders. It's funny, when I was talking at the NFL on Monday's podcast, I talked about how political correctness was just ruining the league in general. We've made football a little too political as far as the NFL goes. I briefly mentioned the how they're going after cheerleaders, and lo and behold, I found a column that someone sent to me by Dennis Prager, who I deeply respect, as many of you longtime listeners know. Dennis is a great intellect, someone who I really look up to, and who really understands relationships between men and women and how the male mind works and how the female mind works, and has written several books on the human condition. So Prager wrote an excellent column on townhall.com. Link, of course, will be in the description of the audio podcast show notes. So, headline from townhall.com, let me get into this. Why is there a war on cheerleaders? By Dennis Prager. And now I'm reading this. If I were to tell you that a growing group of killjoys wanted to ban NFL cheerleading, would you guess that this group is on the political left or right? Must be the right, right? They're the religious ones with all the sexual hang-ups. Wrong. They're on the left. And what's their problem with cheerleading? I'll let them speak for themselves. In the Boston Globe, Marjorie Egan, Globe columnist and co-host of NPR's Boston Public Radio, wrote a column titled, quote, "It's time to say goodbye to the NFL cheerleaders." She described NFL cheerleading as, quote-unquote, creepy and demeaning. USA Today sports columnist Nancy Armoire came to the same conclusion. Quote, "The underlying premise of NFL cheerleading is degrading. NFL cheerleaders need to go," end quote. Chicago Tribune sports reporter Shannon Ryan wrote, quote, "The league has shown only that it regards cheerleaders as pieces of sideline eye candy." To make her point, she asked, why aren't there scantily clad, dressed male cheerleaders in dance teams? Well, there actually are. And that's just my commentary. But getting back to the piece. Only the well-educated could ask such a stupid question, because only the highly educated could deny that, with a few exceptions, the only people who would like to see scantily dressed male cheerleaders are gay men. In USA Today, Yale Divinity School Director of Communications, Tom Krattenmaker, added a theological voice to the anti-cheerleader chorus. "It's time," he intoned, "to call this out for what it is to be. Demeaning to women and an anchorism that ought to be beneath the male fans to whom this titillating eye candy is served." This sentence and his whole piece is what goes for deep thought on the left today. He doesn't explain how being an NFL cheerleader is demeaning. He simply declares it so. Did he bother to interview any cheerleaders? I did. This is Prager speaking. And the consensus among cheerleaders is that it is one of their greatest life experiences. Jackie Scott, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Jacie. So yeah, I'm going with Jackie. Jackie Scott, a black woman who retired from being a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader in 2016, wrote in response to Nancy Armoire, "I spent 4 years as a cheerleader in the NFL, and the experiences that each year brought helped shape me into the woman I am today. I saw countries I had never imagined seeing. I made a positive impact in lives young and old. And I did all with 30-something incredible women. I wouldn't trade my time as a cheerleader for anything. What is demeaning to cheerleaders is not cheerleading, but people like Tom Krattenmaker, Shannon Ryan, Marjorie Egan, and Nancy Armoire, who have the conceit and meanness to label these women demeaned." I interviewed a former Atlanta Falcons cheerleader, Nina Allen, now Noah Hemi, on my radio show. When she entered my studio, I was struck by how attractive she was 20 years after retiring from cheerleading, and by her modest dress. Regarding her dress, she explained that soon after retiring as a cheerleader, she met an Orthodox Jewish man, fell in love, converted to Orthodox Judaism, and married. Apparently, her religious husband, a successful businessman, didn't find this woman's cheerleading background quote-unquote demeaning. On the contrary, like the vast majority of men, religious or secular, he was delighted to be dating and ultimately marrying an NFL cheerleader. Good thing he didn't go to Yale Divinity School. Yale is full of lefties too, by the way. It is clear that even now, as an Orthodox Jew who dresses in the long skirts and long sleeves, she doesn't find cheerleading demeaning. She sent me a photo of herself from her cheerleader days. As she wrote to me, quote, "I can't imagine my life without having the experience I did as an NFL cheerleader. It was literally life-changing for me. The friendships I made, the places we were able to go, and the people we were able to meet cannot be duplicated. The thought of that being taken away from young girls who dream of one day becoming a pro cheerleader scares me." Why do leftists have contempt for cheerleading and cheerleaders, who after all chose to be cheerleaders, and for virtually no pay? Pay? A Vanity Fair piece on cheerleaders gave the game away. The league profits from selling a retrograde notion of masculinity, big, strong men, unafraid to take a hit, surrounded by enthusiastic, scantily clad women. End quote. Whereas a Canadian Broadcasting Corporation article titled "Pro Cheerleading Should Be Abolished" reported former professional basketball player Mariah Burton Nelson said, quote, "Cheerleading implies that the woman's proper role is to support men, smile at men, and fulfill the sexual fantasies of men," end quote. The left has contempt for masculinity and the male sexual nature that is part of it. The new emasculated man will not look at sexy women, as the new defeminized man will not want to support men, as the new defeminized women will not want to support men, let alone appear sexy for them. Okay. The left claims to be pro-choice, but it demands the abolition of NFL and NBA cheerleading without giving women a choice to be cheerleaders, just as it never gave Miss America participants a choice when it abolished the Miss America swimsuit competition. Leftists believe that they are morally superior people and therefore have the right to deprive anyone, man or woman, from choosing what the left disdains. The only woman's choice the left cares about is the choice to extinguish nascent human life. Even if you have no interest in football or cheerleading, this should be your issue. We have to tell the left here, as in virtually every other area of life, and in the most forceful terms possible, just leave us alone, let us live our lives with our small joys, and grow up. Men like looking at women, and women like being looked at. That, folks, by the way, is so true. I'll do commentary on this after I finish reading. Anyway, a world without NFL cheerleaders is far preferable. A world with NFL cheerleaders is far preferable to the world the left wants to create. A dystopia in which men and women are interchangeable. And that's the end of the column. So, Dennis Prager makes a case that I have been making for years, which is that men like to look at attractive women. Okay, and the definition of what's attractive to men, it's very individual for men. Without getting too crass, some men like, breasts. Some like, rear ends. Some, such as myself, like both. In general, most men find women sexually attractive, and there's nothing wrong with that inherently. That's how we end up procreating and making, life. That's how that whole thing works. Men find women attractive, women find men attractive. We connect, we marry, or sometimes we don't, and we procreate, and we have children. That's the way, on a biological level, that's how this whole thing works. But let me be even more frank here, because one of the other things that Prager doesn't really cover in this column, which he did a great job, but one thing he didn't bring up, which I would have added, is the fact that a lot of these same feminists, the hardcore feminist lefties, and the PC buzzkill police, these are the same people who they complain about NFL cheerleaders and basically young women on the sidelines, looking sexy by their own free will and dancing and basically doing, a performance art and entertaining people, both men and women. Yet these are the same people who constantly judge men too for being too restrictive on women's sexuality, and a woman doesn't need to be modest, and whatnot. You can't have it both ways. You can't say that cheerleading is degrading, but yet women should be, completely able to be sexually liberated 110%, and men shouldn't get a say in any of it. You can't have it both ways. NFL cheerleading is not degrading. On the other hand, things like things like hardcore porn are pretty demeaning. Lots of these new, progressives see that as liberating. Not all of them, but a lot of them are, are totally, it's my body, it's my choice. So now, it's interesting that the left has become the sexual Puritans, so to speak. But not necessarily in a religious sense of the word. They're more religious, they're more sexual Puritans for their own ideology. All in all, I just think it's very bizarre, it's very weird, and it's stupid that something as non-controversial as NFL cheerleaders is being demonized. Alright, here's my advice. If you don't like NFL cheerleaders, don't watch them. If you have a big problem with them, don't support them. Don't visit their, Facebook pages. Don't buy merchandise. They're not ruining the experience of football for you. They're optional. You're not forced to look at them if you have a problem with them. Ultimately, what it comes down to is these feminists just hate men. That's totally what it comes down to. And, like Prager said, they didn't interview any actual cheerleaders. Now, I, for one, ladies and gentlemen, have known some cheerleaders, one of whom has gone on to try out for professional cheerleading. I'm not sure if she got in. She came pretty close, but I don't think she did. Oh, I do know one of the Denver Broncos cheerleaders. Not super well, but I went to high school with her. Very respectable young woman. Danced in high school for the cheer team of my high school alumni. And she's living a healthy and productive life, and she says too that cheerleading helped her achieve her athletic goals and make business connections. This is the other thing. Lots of NFL cheerleaders go on to pursue careers in modeling, acting, business. The ties that a lot of these NFL cheerleading teams have with the community opens doors up for these women. But because it's not politically, because it doesn't fit the political narrative of the left, they can't fathom the idea of women being empowered, right? Which is what they always claim. They're for women's empowerment. They can't grasp the fact that women can be empowered and yet sexually attractive to men. That whole concept just doesn't register for them, and it really is sad. And I'll tell you what, if the NFL does keep on cheerleading squads and they start to get rid of them or change them drastically with the uniform, I'll tell you what, the NFL is already, losing fans because of the whole politicalization. But if this starts to become if the vocal minority gets their way on this, I guarantee you that the NFL will surely lose its entire base. It'll be the straw that broke the camel's back. So, anyway, this is just ridiculous. Cheerleading is not demeaning to women inherently. Yeah, I'm sure there may have been a few women who have had bad experiences, but the minority does not speak for the whole in this case. So there's no reason for the political correctness mob squad to win this one. And if if the fans have their way, they won't, which does give me hope. It does. All right, folks. So that was really our main topic for tonight. So I don't want to make this podcast too long. I realize it's less than 30 minutes. And that was our little culture bit for the week, was on NFL cheerleading. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Real quick, before the end of this podcast, I do want to address this whole Eric Nimmer stolen valor thing, because a few of the listeners messaged me and asked me if I had seen Owen Benjamin's disavowalment of Eric Nimmer, and I did, and I made an entire video on the whole stolen valor situation, like the day before, on Wednesday of this week. So go and watch that if you're curious about that. Let me just say this. I do want to thank those of the Bears who actually have listened to what I've had to say and who have, reconsidered things. But I also know that many of you who are Bears are defending Nimmer, who stole Veller, and that's your choice. It's been proven that he stole Veller. I mean, even Owen is distancing himself, so there's no reason to come after Chuck or any of the other guests I've had on the show. I'm washing my hands of this, and if you want to know more what my thoughts are on this, go check out the video on my YouTube channel and watch it for yourselves. But anyway, folks, like I said, I'll be back on Saturday for the State of the Union full review show, and then of course we'll have the American Watchman Roundtable on Sunday evening to discuss the State of the Union. So in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so very much for tuning into the podcast. Have a great rest of your week. I'll see you on Saturday evening. Until then, good day or good evening. God bless and God save this great nation. Thank you for tuning into the podcast, and I will see you on Saturday. Hey there, folks. If you've made it this far to the end of the podcast, I'd like to thank you very much for listening to the show. You are the ones that make it possible for me to make an income from podcasting, and I greatly appreciate that. Just by listening to our show, you are helping us gain ad revenue. However, if you would really like to help support the show, I encourage you to please donate to the podcast and become a supporter of the show. You can head over to anchor.fm/Whitfield Report and click the support this podcast button and choose the amount that suits you to support the show. Or you can click the link in the show notes and it will directly take you to that page. If you can support the podcast, I really, really appreciate that. Anything that you can do to help out is greatly appreciated. Even if you can't afford to help financially support the podcast, I encourage you to please go on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher and please leave this podcast a positive 5-star review. That really helps us out here at the Whitfield Report. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next episode.